How secure are the military installations in the United States? People go to their work every day. They flash a badge. They're swiping it through a scanner. There's no metal detectors, no pat-downs, no surges or anything. So how secure are these military installations? J.D. Gordon is a former Defense Department spokesman. He's also a FoxNews.com contributor. J.D., this brings up serious issues. I mean, we operate and we believe as we go to work every day that the places that operate, that deal with our security, are secure. What does this bring up now?
Hi, Lauren. Well, I think the interesting thing here is that somebody got through the cracks. Basically, we had a bad apple, obviously, in Aaron Alexis, and he fell through the cracks. I think the military security clearance system isn't working. I think it's broken. But on the whole, military bases are pretty safe. But a guy like Aaron Alexis, who had 2 gun arrests, should really never have been given a job as a security, as a contractor working for the government. So I think that it did fail us today and yesterday. I think that we have to do a better job. I'm glad that the military is going to pay more attention to how people get cleared to be contractors and even how they get on the base.
Yeah, but the Navy Yard itself, how secure was the Navy Yard? In terms of its security, did they lax any kind of rule that already existed?
No, basically, this Aaron Alexis had a valid security pass for the Navy Yard. He got through the gate basically just by showing his ID. He even got in the building, the Naval Sea Systems Command building, through the regular security gates. And basically, he went to one of the men's rooms, apparently, and he assembled the weapons there. So he did everything that he was authorized to do as far as getting into the base, as far as getting into the facility. The problem is the security clearance system is broken. It failed us. Basically, we have contractors looking at these people to give them clearance. This guy had 2 gun arrests. He should have never been given that job.
Yeah, I'm wondering about this because when you work at a bank, you have to have a bond rating. I mean, just to be a secretary, you have to have a bond rating to work in places like banks. Isn't there something similar, some kind of screening process that happens to work on a military installation?
Yeah, there should be. There's a detailed background investigation for everybody that works in the military, everybody that's a DoD civilian. But the problem is, as we saw with Edward Snowden's case, who fabricated large chunks of his resume, basically anybody that's applying for a government job should have a detailed background investigation, but that's not happening. We have contractors with very little government oversight, like we saw with Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden should have never had the position he had because somebody should have flagged in his background investigation that he lied so often on his resume. The same thing with Aaron Alexis. Somebody should have saw that he had 2 gun arrests. He should have never been given a job as a government contractor. But the other thing, Lauren, I'd like to mention, too, is we have to do a better job just at the security, with security in general at the gates. Right now, if you have a military ID or a DoD civilian ID, a contractor ID, they just wave you through. There are very few random inspections. I think we need to step up the inspections physically at the gates, because if someone had inspected his car, they would have found all the pieces of the shotgun, and they would have found the pistols. So I think we have to do a better job there as well.
Well, you bring up issues that, of course, would cost a lot more money. We were just talking with Jennifer Griven, and talking about their budget cuts had nothing to do with this. But you're bringing up issues that would involve increased strain on the budget. If you're going to have people searching cars of regular employees on a regular basis, that takes a lot more money.
Lauren, you're absolutely right. It's going to take more money. And right now we're already facing $1 trillion in defense cuts over the next decade through sequestration. Sequestration is a 10-year program, not a 1-year program. So the total is $1 trillion, with a half a trillion in cuts already programmed into the defense budgets over the next decade. Sequestration is another $500 billion. So, yeah, you're right. This would cost a lot more money. And I don't think that we're going to be as safe unless we put the money towards protecting our men and women on military bases. I think the government's taking a flawed approach on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that any secure system has chinks in it. I mean, you're going to find a little chink in the armor of any kind of security system, but it seems as though there were some basic things that just didn't happen. One of the things, you're combining the effort of, let's say, someone who has a record combined with somebody who has some sort of mental issues. I mean, it was kind of the perfect storm of things could go wrong.
It was a perfect storm. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of Fort Hood. Major Hassan in 2009 killed 13 people there. He had a lot of warning signs. Basically, he even had SOA on his business cards, Soldier of Allah. He talked about things that were favorable to jihadists all the time, but nobody really called him on it because people were afraid of Islamophobia or what.
Right,
whatever
that,
was on their
that
mind.
brings another issue, though, to get today, because even though this Alexis was not associated with any kind of Islam or Muslim religion, in fact, he was associated with any religion, with the Buddhist faith, which is the most docile and compassionate, of any faith that it's out there, at least in terms of actions that we've seen. But has the Obama administration sort of made people very unsure about attacking anybody? I mean, giving everybody the benefit of the doubt. Is this sort of the philosophy of the Obama administration?
Right, because basically the Obama administration has created, I would say, sort of a culture of fear within the Pentagon and the Justice Department. If you question anybody, they may come back at you. You may lose your job. So the FBI, in the case of Fort Hood, had been reading Major Hassan's emails to Anwar al-Awlaki, one of the spiritual leaders of al-Qaeda, but they didn't share it with the military because they were afraid of political correctness run amok at the Justice Department. So that's one of the reasons we had Fort Hood. One of the reasons we had the shooting at the Washington Navy Yard this week is because nobody called this guy, Aaron Alexis, on his multiple gun arrests in the past. Had nothing to do with religion, of course, but still, there were warning signs from Aaron Alexis, too, and people just didn't do their jobs who were supposed to be protecting our men and women in uniform and our civilians. People just dropped the ball on it.
Now, there's another issue that has to do with the larger culture, and that is violent video games. This is something that is going to do, that it seems to be a regular occurrence in some of these mass shootings, that they are obsessed with these sort of violent video games. What can you do about that?
You know, Lauren, I've written several columns about that because I think that Hollywood and these violent video games really have a share of the blame. We've had guns around a long time. We've had crazy people a long time. What's new with all these mass shootings? We have 21 mass shootings in the last few years. And what's new? I think in the last few decades, really, even the last couple decades, we've seen the increase in Hollywood blockbusters where there's mass killings. These video games where you kill 100 people before breakfast. This guy, Aaron Alexis, was allegedly missing work a lot of times because he'd be up late playing these military assault type video games like the Call of Duty kind. So he basically was an angry guy, a depressed guy, and he acted out his fantasy and actually, instead of just playing a video game, he actually mowed down a dozen people at the Navy Yard. More than that, but a dozen killed. So I think that the video game industry really has to do better. I think it's a market issue, but if they can't correct themselves, I think the government should step in and correct them.
Wow. I want to thank you very much, J.D. Gordon, former Defense Department spokesman and FoxNews.com contributor. Thank you very much for shedding some light on this situation.